Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Spooked Coast to Coast. We have Joy and Joey. Joey, you may see it on the name there, Hook and Ram, but that's our good old friend Joey. Welcome. Thank you guys for coming. Joey, there's no clouds where you're at, man. That's an awesome looking sky.
It is. It's very clear.
Yeah.
It looks very hot.
I don't want to mention that, but yeah, it looks a little hot.
Yeah.
So today we have an amazing guest for you, just like every other week, man. We've been blessed. Honestly, the four of us have been blessed to be able to have this show and to come across a lot of interesting individuals that want to share their stories and get to know you guys out there. So today's no exception. So, babe, why don't you tell the good folks a little bit about who we have today?
Yes. Well, today we have Paranormal Investigator, author, and director of the Warren Legacy Foundation. And he also started his paranormal journey 40 years ago, working alongside his grandparents, which is Ed and Lorraine Warren. So we're going to welcome in Chris McKinnell.
Welcome, Chris.
Welcome. Yay.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you for being on and joining us today. We appreciate you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. Whose birthday? Joy, is your birthday?
Yeah.
Hey, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Everybody say happy birthday to Joy. I'm like reading the comments. I was like, what?
Thank you.
Sorry, gang. We've had a
rough week.
rough week, needless to say.
Yeah.
But we're here now, and we have Chris that we're gonna be talking to today. So it's gonna be a great one. Very educational too.
We had somebody in the comments says, "Hey, Chris, it's John from Canada." So,
Hey, John, how you doing?
all
I'm
right.
wondering if John I know, but there are probably more than one John up in Canada.
I'm sure. So let's start off with growing up with the paranormal mentors that you had. Tell us about like maybe your first case with them, or I first want to go to did you experience paranormal things as a child, or was it later on?
Oh, yeah, my entire life. I was locked in the museum one night when I was 3 years old. That scarred me for my entire childhood. I couldn't sleep without the light on until I was 16 and went on my very first case. But I am a psychic who didn't know what was going on around him, and I would hear things and feel things around me. I'd be terrified of the dark, and I'd have to have the TV on all night long and a light on all night long to drown it out. And it didn't matter what house I was in. We moved around a lot. Every single house we went in, my bedroom was always freezing cold. No other room in the house, just mine.
Yeah.
Something was trying to always come through. But I started going on lecture tours with my grandparents when I was 14. And it was amazing to watch my grandmother work. I mean, they would do a lot of the TV interviews and so forth. And we went to this one haunted house. We weren't even allowed to go inside of it. But we were there with, I think it was PM Magazine or Inside Edition, and a local reporter who was doing a story on the house. Now, he had already gotten all of his interviews. He had all of his notes. So he had them, but he didn't write the story yet. And as my grandmother is standing out in front of this house talking about this apparition of a big, heavy, blood-stained, aproned man, and the smell of rotting flesh coming out of the kitchen sink, and all of these things, he's showing me his notes and pointing out how everybody has been reporting these things. I'm like, my grandmother's a superhero. It just blew my mind.
Yeah.
I went on my first case when I was 16. I never thought I was going to do this work. It wasn't something I ever envisioned. But, my grandfather tried to join the Marines when he was 16 to go fight in World War II. His father wasn't having any of that, and he had to wait till he was 17 to join the Navy. But I think he thought, my grandson is not going to be afraid of the dark. That's just not going to happen. So
Right.
he brought me into an over-the-top poltergeist case in Lee, Massachusetts. I mean, it was amazing. We got there, and it was just my grandfather, a man named Paul Bartz, and myself. And the husband and wife wouldn't even go in the house without us. When we walked in, we understood why. It was just 2 rooms downstairs, 3 bedrooms upstairs, and a bathroom. And then there was an attic with a pull-down staircase. And the whole house was shaking from pounding. It was like in repetitions of 3. Boom, boom, boom.
Mm.
And as we're walking up the stairs, I can hear clawing and growling coming from the walls. When I got to the top of the stairs, the attic stairs had been pulled down. One night, the woman had been alone with the kids. Her husband was working at the mill overnight, and this hulking black shape came into the room, picked up her rosary, and twirled them as if to say, "You think these are going to stop me?"
Oh, like teasing her, pretty much.
What's that?
Like teasing them at that point.
Intimidating, yeah, absolutely. And she immediately tried to run to her first daughter's bedroom, and the door wouldn't open, even though there was no lock on it. And then those stairs came down on her head and knocked her out. When she finally came to, she was able to get to her 2 girls, and they got out of the house and never went back until the night we were there. But my grandfather decided I was going to be sitting in the master bedroom for the next hour while they went downstairs and used religious provocation to try to make this thing reveal itself even further. I'm thinking, what else do you need to know about this thing?
Wow.
You know, but I did it. I sat there in the dark, listening to everything happening right behind my head. I tell my grandfather what's happening, he'd be like, "Fine, Chris, just let us know if anything else happens." I'm like, "What else do you want to happen?"
Yeah. Well,
What am I? A sacrifice? But by the end of the night, at 3 o'clock in the morning, we were on a radio show. The woman and my grandfather were on the couch. I was in a recliner. I had a crucifix in my hand, and we were on a telephone interview. And Paul and the husband were upstairs in another bedroom on the phone. Totally dark. But 2 hulking black shapes came down the stairs, and we could see them even in the dark, looking at us. And the woman screamed that her face was on fire. My grandfather put the flashlight on her face, and we watched 3 claw marks appear on the left side of her face and blood drip onto her chest. And then that pot that had the Holy Church incense in it came flying out of the kitchen and straight at my head.
Wow.
It just missed me. And the woman started screaming she wanted to get out of the house. I thought, that's a great idea. So I ran to the front door as the lights start going on and off by themselves, and the door wouldn't open. Then the recliner that I was sitting in tumbled across the room at me, and then the door opened by itself, and she and I ran out. My grandfather sat there calmly on the phone, describing everything that was happening around him. The bravest man I've ever known. It just blew my mind. But you know, the funny thing is, that next night when I went home, I went to bed without the light on for the first time. I have never been afraid of the paranormal. The only thing that worries me now, the only thing that scares me now is harm to my loved ones. That's it.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. What do you think that, say, the haunting in that case was it something on the land, or did they bring it in maybe by doing a seance or something like that? Or
no, they had just inherited it from their uncle. He had just died. This one, I have to admit, you're not going to get a satisfying answer. Here's what we know: that the uncle had died. He had a twin brother. When they were children, they were in a horse-drawn carriage, and they were horsing around, and the twin fell out of the carriage and went under the wheels and was killed. And the first night they were in the house, a little boy dressed in white showed up in their bedroom door, said, "Where do all the lonely people go?" The lady of the house decided to call her local priest and have the house blessed. She had converted from Judaism, and she was a devout Catholic now. But my grandfather's theory was, and I don't agree with this, I admit, he said that the devil hates people who convert to Christianity, and that's why they were targeted. I just can't believe that. We just didn't go into the history well enough, and I didn't know enough at that point in my, beginning of my career to learn what to ask. So I just accepted it at that point.
Wow. For him to be so unfazed, which it seems like he seems like a tough, he's always seemed like a tough guy, Ed Warren.
So cool, like calm and collected. That's my impression of him.
Yeah, he was. Well, he was a type A personality. He could lose his cool over the funniest things. Like if an interviewer didn't treat him with respect, that was a no-no. He would lose his crap. But in a case, never saw him lose his cool once. We were in, the movie The Nun?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not real, but there is a character in there. His name is Frenchie in the movies, and it's revealed that his real name is Maurice Theriault. That was one of my cases.
Okay.
And during the exorcism of Maurice, I was there protecting Bishop McKinnell, and my grandfather and grandmother were off to the side. My grandfather had a heart attack during that exorcism.
Wow.
Yeah. And he still stayed through the whole thing. He ended up in the hospital the next morning, but tough man.
And heart attack, I would believe do you think it was caused by the whole
The exorcism
itself, or just the stress of it? Or maybe
Well, no, honestly, my grandmother thought it was a different case that we had worked on earlier in the day, which was a poltergeist case. She blamed that case for my grandfather's heart attack. I think it was probably the Maurice exorcism. I watched Maurice come under possession several times. I had to face him down several times. There was a lot of power there, and it was a deadly case. People died on that case.
Wow.
Why do people get possessed like that? What happens?
In this case, in Maurice's case, it was his father. It's been written about as though we're demonic, but his father was a monster who had abused him both sexually, mentally, physically throughout his life. And even to the very last moment of his life, he had called Maurice one afternoon and said, "Maurice, I just want you to know I love you." First time he ever said that. And then while Maurice listened on the phone, his father walked in the next room, picked up a gun, shot his mother to death, and then shot himself. Maurice, we had a successful exorcism, but at that point, we didn't understand that the psychological trauma that he had been through had been the doorway for these things to manifest.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't get him the psychological follow-up that he needed.
Yeah.
And about a year and a half, 2 years later, I was living in Africa at the time with the Peace Corps. I eventually got the sad news that he had come under possession again. His wife no longer wanted to have anything to do with this. She'd gotten a court order to keep him out, a restraining order, and he was waiting for her one night as she came home, blew her arm off with a shotgun as she was getting out of the car, dragged her bleeding into the kitchen, sat her at the kitchen table. She thought, this is it. I'm going to go just like Maurice's mother had died.
All right.
At the last moment, he just put the shotgun under his head and blew his head off.
Wow, that is insane.
Yeah.
That's
For
Crazy.
people who treat this as a hobby, they need to understand there are real repercussions. And it can be deadly. It's not normally, and people shouldn't jump to that conclusion, but you can manifest monsters.
Especially with past trauma and stuff like that. I do notice that's a big factor in it.
We always look for the underlying issue that makes a person vulnerable, because it's not going to happen if someone is in a good place in their life. It's always when they're vulnerable, whether it's drug addiction or mental illness or what have you. We always want to know all of the history of a person when we take on a case. And we're not going to say, oh, you're a drug addict, you're not having any real experiences. No, that could be the reason you're having real experiences.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to make you go get help for that drug addiction. If we don't deal with the underlying issue, then even if we're successful in getting rid of something, it's just going to manifest again.
Yeah,
I always say, I like to say depression is demons. I always tell people, like, don't let the demons get to you, you know?
Yeah, this is going to sound strange coming from the grandson of the demonologist. I don't believe in demons. I'm an exorcist.
I heard that on your one of your videos. So I was like, what?
I believe in thought manifestations, egregores and tulpas, that they are real, they are spirits, but they're created with our living energy, and they can take on a life of their own. They're kind of like dissociative personality disorder, taken to the nth degree.
Hey, Black Smoke. Yeah, I was like, when I heard that, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, everybody has their opinions of what it is, you know? So,
well, I've lived all over the world. I've lived in over 105 places.
Wow.
And I've studied this phenomena on 6 continents. Wow. And what I found is that it always manifests according to the cultural and spiritual beliefs of the people involved. It may have, for instance, in a case in Australia, there was an Indonesian manifestation, but it was because the former owners had used Indonesian magic to protect the property, and when they left that entity there, and it was able to attack the next family who lived there.
Yeah. And then growing up, my impression of demon was the red horns, or the red guy with the horns, and you know.
And sometimes it doesn't appear like that because
your typical devil.
Yeah, your typical, like your Santa Claus, pretty much, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name? David Glotzel? Yeah. From the Devil in Connecticut case.
Uh-huh.
You know, the Conjuring 3. He actually saw a red horned devil with a tail and pitchfork, because at 10 years old, what's more terrifying to a child than the devil?
Exactly. Especially like that.
Yeah.
I used to live in a house. This is not my childhood home that we were talking about. This is when we were engaged to be married. When I lived in that house always had issues. But at one point we ended up moving in there to save up for our wedding. And that location was the only place. It never happened again. But they would come and do like psychic attacks. Like almost all the time. And the dreams that I had there, like never had I had seen anything that looked like so demonic, like scary like that, like a double, like your full on scary ass mask. Until I had a dream there, and I was sitting with my mom in my bed, like in another house bed in the dream, right? And she did some weird thing where I kind of like looked at her in the dream, and her demeanor, her mouth like did some weird thing, and it went like really like big, and then her whole face morphed into like this demon. I freaked out.
Hell no! I can just see it growling. Oh no!
Yeah, and then I was like jumping out of bed, but it's something like that, and you just it's so imprinted, you will never forget that.
Yeah. The thing is, when your emotions are high, and I don't mean positive emotions because it doesn't seem to work as much with those, but when your heart is pumping hard from terror or anger or things like that, you're throwing off a lot more EMF, a lot more electromagnetic energy. And that's what it's using to manifest. So it's going to manifest according to your fears and terrors, because that's what you're feeding it. Annabelle is a great example of that. Annabelle originally was loved, and it manifested as a little girl who wanted to play hide and seek, left playful messages. But when they started to get creeped out, then they were feeding it negative energy, and it started to become very negative. Now it's very deadly.
Do you
Can I
think
ask you
it's safe to say that? Oh, go ahead, Martin. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Can I ask you a sidebar question? Why did the movies feel like they had to make Annabelle look so sinister when in reality Annabelle's a Raggedy Ann doll?
I know.
And it's it's pretty spooky. The original Raggedy Ann Annabelle. Why did they have to go all out? Is it just for the effects
So maybe it
or
was
visualization
maybe the
purpose
company
of it?
itself.
I was thinking it was probably a copyright issue because there've been
I was thinking that.
cartoons and things like that. But also, realistically, what man would buy his pregnant wife such an ugly ass doll as a gift? It's a present.
Oh God.
I had a Raggedy. I loved it.
I loved Raggedy Ann. No, but not the one in the movie. The one in the movie.
Yeah, the red hair one triangle. No, yeah. I think it also has to do with selling too. You can't make Raggedy Ann look scary, I think
we have a question in the chat room. So this question is from Jeremy Williams. So he says, do you think there's a possibility of nanotechnology being confused with or connected to the paranormal and elemental world?
It's an interesting question. I don't know enough about where we are with nanotechnology. I don't think we're nearly to a point where we can approximate any of that. I have other theories that are very scientifically based, but I don't know is my answer. I just don't know if nanotech has gotten to the point where it could do anything like that.
Yeah.
I had to Google nanotechnology. I don't even know what the hell that was.
And
I still don't know what it is because this is like
it's microscopic robots. So far, they've been able to get them to move cells around and things like that I've seen in experiments, but I haven't seen them really do any of the great things that you see in sci-fi.
Oh.
Yeah, that was like the cartoon movie, the with the white marshmallow-looking guy.
Which guy?
It's a cartoon where the father passes away, he leaves the son some marshmallow-looking, and the enemy is a nanobot, something.
Oh my God, I don't know.
I forgot the name of the cartoon.
You're gonna have to Google that one for me.
It's been a while.
Guys, chat room, if you guys know what Joey's talking about, put it in the chat room. Help us out.
For real. So going to Lorraine. So I know she had abilities, right? So she was a medium or a psychic medium.
Well, she was a light trance medium, and all mediums are psychics. Yeah. But not all psychics are mediums. Right. The mediums are the top tier, have the top tier abilities.
Wait, Joey, is it Baymax? Wait, Big Hero 6? Big
Hero 6, I think, where the bad guy ends up creating nanobots or something.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I think Brittany's got it. Yeah. Okay. Another person said Baymax. Okay.
I gotta look that up because I don't remember that movie.
All right. We're sorry, Chris.
No problem. Hey, I'm a nerd. Don't get me wrong. I never got into the Japanese stuff.
Yeah. That movie is so old. Like I don't remember. I don't remember it. It looks cute. So how did and I know so you have so when I first met you was in a Facebook group. And there was one time they were doing like a group meetup, and it was a psychic support group. And I remember you were on there just answering questions that people had about abilities and stuff like that, or strengthening, and just to work on it, like a workshop. And so my question to you was, when did you? Well, I know you said growing up, you kind of realized the cold in your room, like everything was following you, right? So when did you?
In retrospect, that I knew. It's only in retrospect that I knew. My grandmother took me under her wing when I was about 17, and that's when she was helping me to learn how to read auras and to interpret impressions that I was getting. And she did that for a lot of people. She was wonderful. I I can't say enough good about my grandmother. She was honestly the sweetest, kindest person in the world.
I would have loved to seen her actually in action to work and just
yeah.
pick up things and locations
yeah.
and stuff like that. You know.
I mean, you think of when you think of, let's say, for example, basketball, you think of Michael Jordan, and you want to kind of like mimic some of the things that made him so great. Imagine if we had the capabilities of being able to see, you know, Ed and Lorraine in their element, you know, and how they are.
Were they
My
anything?
grandmother's around a lot now. She's making up for lost time. My grandfather doesn't show up as much anymore. I think he's moved on, but he was around for a while. He appeared to me in Costa Rica, Scotland, and Peru, but I think Peru was the last time. My grandmother, on the other hand, the last time I saw her was maybe 2 months ago.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
How does she come to you? Like, how do you know it's her?
Honestly, younger than me, which is kind of annoying. She looks like she's 50, and I'm 60. So it's neat to they'll always appear the way that you remember them. And I remember my grandmother that way. I don't remember her as being 92 and frail. I mean, I do, but that's not how I picture her in my head.
Right.
Exactly, their best, like their best version of them.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh.
There was
we have another question from Jeremy Williams. So we have here, do you know anything about voice-to-skull technology being able to inject thoughts or voices into a subject's mind or conscious?
I have looked into that. I haven't seen any evidence that this is something that people actually need to worry about. We are using sound waves in other defense mechanisms, and we can project it to project heat and things like that. But I know that there is a theory out there that people believe that is possible, that these voices are being injected into your head by others, but I have not seen any evidence to support that.
Okay.
I mean, is he talking about maybe like telepathically sending out a message into your head and maybe trying to?
No, this is a device. If you look it up, there's a name for it, and I don't remember the name of it right now, but there's this belief that the government's been working on this idea of using, maybe it's real low frequency to go directly into your head so nobody else can hear it, only you.
Gosh. Oh, wow. I wouldn't doubt it. I don't know. I wanted to see if you can share, what did you, continuing to be like a medium and a psychic yourself, is there anything that you could share for others, how to like strengthen their abilities, and if they wanted to start on that?
Be humble. I'm a psychic who doesn't believe any psychic without evidence. I don't believe myself without evidence. If I don't have any verification, do not share what you're feeling as though it's gospel. Because a psychic, if a person believes in you, your word carries a lot of weight. Mm-hmm. And that's a responsibility you have to take seriously.
Yeah.
I only use my abilities for my work. Mediumship is one I rarely use. The last time I did it was maybe a month and a half ago. A mother and father had gotten a hold of me. Their son had just died. And I felt like, yes, for some reason, I feel like I should do this. And I was able to come up with this name that I never in a million, I couldn't even tell you what it was now. I don't remember readings after the fact. But it was the name of his, a piece of mining equipment that he used in the mines. And that was their way of knowing for sure that I was talking to him. And yeah, he committed suicide, and he felt pretty bad about it, but he had felt also like he had no choice.
We have another question. This time it's from Retro Man and Cringer. So it says here, any advice for anyone wanting to become an investigator? Well, I'm assuming a paranormal investigator.
Yes. Number one, don't learn anything from the Conjuring movies or from Hollywood or from reality TV. None of that is real. And also remember, you're dealing with real people's lives.
Yeah.
So start simple. Start with things like going to public investigations. Start slow like that. If you can find a good, reputable team in your area, work with them, see if they're willing to take you on. Do not look at the paranormal through any particular religious lens. You have to look at things clear-headed. You cannot define it. Religion is wonderful for dealing with paranormal phenomena. It works. It's a focus for your faith. That is powerful, but it is not a good investigative tool. Other than that, be really comfortable with not having answers. It's okay to not know.
Yeah.
We want to put everything in little boxes and label everything. You don't want to label anything. It just, you're going to miss out on the nuances because the paranormal defies description.
I would also add, be in a good headspace when you go as well, mentally. Yeah.
And physically as well. Do not ever go into a home if you're ill or depressed, because then you're just bringing something negative into that family that you're trying to help.
Exactly.
And keep in mind, you're there to help. You're not there to catch a 2-second video of a cup flying across the room.
Yeah.
And
99% of the time, it doesn't happen.
I would also say know your limit too.
Yeah. Good.
You're starting to feel like you're getting affected. Trust your gut. If something just doesn't feel right, you're just better off getting out of there. And, you know, like the saying goes, live to fight another day.
But please never, ever tell the people you're working with, oh, it's demonic, I can't deal with this. Or, oh my God, it's too much for me. No, your first job is to instill confidence and calm. You have to minimize the fear. And because that's what it's feeding on. It's feeding on those negative energies. You don't want them to be terrified when you leave. I have seen well-meaning people go in, say, oh my God, it's a demon, and run out, leaving the family holding the bag more times than I can count. And those people often will go on to pay thousands of dollars to charlatans to get rid of this thing.
Yeah.
When it turns out that in one particular case, in I think it was in Georgia, this poor woman, she was an open medium. She had amazing abilities, no training. Spirits were constantly coming to her, but she thought it was a Lilith demon because that's what some person told her. And she was paying $600 a month for deliverances.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Scamming is just incredible.
It's being taken advantage of. That's not right.
Oh, it happens too often. Matter of fact, most of the storefront psychics, maybe I shouldn't say most, but an awful lot of them are part of an actual ring that is organized. And it's usually Eastern European. So be very careful. What I tell people to do is, if you want to test out whether or not you're going to see a good psychic, you go in and you say, I want to contact my Uncle Ralph. I really need to talk to him, when you don't have an Uncle Ralph. And if the psychic starts talking to Uncle Ralph instead of the actual spirits who might be around you, then you know you're dealing with a fraud.
Yeah. Who was, well, I guess Lorraine always grew up with abilities, but was Ed always into like the paranormal? Also,
Yeah, he grew up in a haunted house, and my great-grandparents did not believe in anything paranormal. But one night, after his landlady had died, he was going up the stairs, and right in the hallway, he saw her standing there. And then another time, he was in his bed, and this lovely middle-aged woman came and sat down on the bed with him and was talking to him. And she said her name was Babe. And when my grandfather told my great grandfather about this, he knew that was his sister Babe, who had starred on Broadway and who had died. And so my grandfather became fascinated. When they finally met when they were 16, it was meant to be.
Oh, I love that.
Good question. As far as the artifacts room and regarding the movies, is there something that you feel was stronger than anything that has been spoken about, that has yet to be spoken about?
The thing is, I thank you for not calling it a museum. I hate that it's called a museum. It's not a museum. It's a prison to block those energies from the public. It was never open to the public except by special invitation and only in very small groups. The truth is, it depends on you. If your energy connects with something in there, then you're going to carry that energy home with you. It could be Annabelle, it could be a conjuring mirror, it could be the Phelps Mansion piano, it could be a number of different things. But it really does depend on you.
Yeah.
An item to me, I actually had a question about that. To me, that always seemed, there was two items in there that always creep me out more than, I guess, like the Annabelle doll. But it's just because the way they look. The one that they call it the Titanic idol.
The Titanic idol? You mean the big devil idol?
The Satanic idol that was found in like forest.
That was my case.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was in Newtown, Connecticut. The wife, she was pregnant and with her first child, with her husband in the house. They lived next door to a funeral home, and they called my grandparents looking for help. My grandparents sent me and my cousin there. The very first night after interviewing them, we decided to spend the night. We were across the hall from them, and in the middle of the night, around 2:00 in the morning, we hear screaming. My cousin's like, "Chris, she's screaming, she's screaming." I'm like, "I know, get out of my way." I run across the hall. The guy is levitated over his pregnant wife under possession.
Wow.
I ran, I jumped, and I grabbed him and tumbled off the other side of the bed. I was on top of him, thank God. And my cousin came up behind me, throwing holy water on him, and we were able to get him out of that. But one morning, as we were leaving, there were a bunch of men in a car. I don't remember if it was 3 or 4. And I grew up in Newtown, so I knew the streets. And I went booking out of there because these guys were obviously following us. And we lost them. But that's when a hunter found that satanic idol in the back, and we realized that these guys were Satanists who were using the necromantic energy, the energy of the dead from that funeral home, and there was a spillover, and that seems to have been what was affecting the husband. Matter of fact, and that was, God, I was only 22 or 23. But when my grandmother died about 6 years ago now, that woman called me. And she was like, "I just want you to know that we have never forgotten you. And our condolences." She had gotten a divorce, but she went on, got remarried, had a bunch of kids, tons of grandchildren, and it was a happy ending for her.
Oh.
It was just so weird to find something like that up there because it looks so tribal,
Yeah, it's made out of, I think it's made out of clay or pottery. And there was a stone there and melted wax and maybe some blood on the stone. It was a makeshift altar.
Wow.
Yeah.
But damn, that now it makes sense, yeah, because of where it was positioned and the things around it.
Yeah.
Oh wow. And
I
then
do-
go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish it because I'm gonna ask about same topic but different question.
So I remember also in that town with there was a theory of, say, the satanic worshippers up there. The same town had the Sandy Hook shooting, and then there was something else I think that happened there, and it was just maybe if it all correlated with that energy.
Well, Fairfield Hills is there. That was a famous asylum. My grandmother actually worked there, I think, during World War II. But that was very, very haunted. And so is the Edmond Town Hall, which is the Newtown Town Hall. But they had, my grandparents, I wasn't in this case. This was, I think, even before I got involved. There was a poltergeist case with an old man who had died. He just didn't want anybody in his home. And this was on Route 25 in Newtown. And my grandparents tried to get him to leave, but ghosts have free will. If they don't want to leave, you cannot make them leave. So eventually the family had to leave, and they turned it into a sporting goods store. But they had to close it at sundown every day, or all hell would break loose. Things would start flying all over the place. Eventually, it went out of business. They tore it down. Now it's either a Rite Aid or a CVS on Route 25.
Oh my God. Is it still haunted? Who knows?
Oh, no. Once they tore it down, the guy seems to have lost interest.
Oh, okay. Joy, go ahead.
So since we're talking about haunted items, why do you think, I've been asked this question, I don't have an answer. Why do you think they become haunted, like dolls or objects? Or
especially dolls. And I think the reason for that is, if you think about what we actually can love, that's an object.
Mm-hmm.
What more than a teddy bear or a doll do we actually invest emotional energy into? And I think that's why we infuse them with so much energy that they can start to manifest into having a life of their own.
Right.
And if you're someone, I had a case, I can't remember, it was in the Carolinas. This young man had an incredibly bad life. I mean, just negative as could be. Parents murdered when he was 2. They were involved in Russian mafia, and he was adopted, but again, abused and troubled life. And he had these 2 kittens, dolls, and he would put all of his angst and his anger and his pain into these dolls, and they started to manifest around him. I had to take them from him and do a cord cutting ritual, and now they're sitting in my grandparents' repository.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think we might have answered this, but do you think the Annabelle doll is the most dangerous item there? They said that. I mean, what's your thoughts?
My grandmother would have told you that was the thing she hated the most. She wouldn't even look at it.
I saw a clip of that.
Yeah, but I personally, I've never had a problem with Annabelle. I only had one time where anything strange ever happened, and that was I had brought my girlfriend to the museum, and we had first gone up to see the cemetery with the white lady, which my grandparents just were fascinated by.
Yeah.
Especially my grandfather. And we took lots of photos there. Then we came back, and she wanted a bunch of photos in the museum. And then we went out, took photos at my grandfather's grave. And the funny thing is, when we went and looked at the photos the next day, the photos from the cemeteries, both ends of the day, were there, but not one photo from the office. All of them are gone.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, not surprising, because I feel like during investigations, they try to do things and not be on camera. Anyways, they're smart. Yeah. To me, the creepiest thing to me is that the satanic idol or the shadow doll, which kind of looks like little witch. I have never liked that thing. What'd you say?
The thing that creeps me out, though, and this is going to sound strange, it's the Tyrannosaurus Rex.
I've never seen a Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah, it's a doll. It's a toy. It's just a plastic Tyrannosaurus Rex that came alive in the Devil in Connecticut case.
We have those blow up costumes, and we like to make
Oh God, yes.
We tried making TikToks with them, but it was a fail.
And how well now you live in South America, right? So how do paranormal cases?
I can't afford the United States.
It's expensive. Well, you left it a good time.
You're not lying.
I know you lived in at one point you lived in Colombia, and I'm half Colombian, and you lived in a town, I think it was Candelaria, right?
Oh no, Candelaria is a section of Bogota.
Yeah.
I lived there. Yes.
Yeah.
I lived in a lot of places, and I love Colombia.
Yeah, Colombia's awesome. I've been there to that town before. How would you say paranormal cases there compared to North America? And the reason why I'm asking that is because the culture is more spiritual, you know.
Yeah, very good.
And more ancient, I think.
I have a theory about why they're so different, and I've been asked this down here. You know, they're always curious why you in the Western world have a more out of control manifestation. You know, you have the over the top poltergeists and things like that. They don't have that here much. They do some, but not a lot. Most of the time, and my theory is it's because magic is still used here in Africa, in Asia. They are directing the energy. So I don't like calling it magic. To me, it's quantum physics in action. That's how my brain works. But it's real. It's affected me. It's hurt me terribly. But I think that's why. I think the energy is not controlled. It's not directed in places like Europe and the United States and Canada. And that's because the tradition of magic isn't as recognized and as used, as prevalent as it is in these other parts of the world.
Do you think it also has to do with like the way the culture, like what we believe, what we were brought up to believe in? You know, it carries you as when you pass away, I'm assuming too, right? Like, I don't know. Does that even happen like that? Like you were brought up Christian, you're going to be a Christian in the afterlife. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Well, most of the people here are Catholic. South America is mostly Catholic. Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of indigenous and other Afro-Brazilian or Afro-derived religions here.
Yeah.
The real mix, but predominantly it's Catholic. The thing that bugs me, I will admit, is the prejudice against people with psychic abilities. They're labeled witches, and they're not, of course. I don't have a problem with witchcraft. You know, if we really look at the archaeological record, the roots of witchcraft probably go back at least 40,000 years, if not longer. I mean, there is proof in a cave in Australia. You can Google this, of one ritual being used for 12,000 years. It only stopped in the 1800s, and it was using tallow, either human or beef tallow, and sticks as a form of ritual to either curse or get rid of negative energies. To me, that's proof that these things work, because no culture is going to hold on to a ritual like that for 12,000 years, unless there's a good reason.
Yeah.
We have a question from the chat. So Retro Man again. Do you need or use any paranormal equipment? Well, from my response, technically no.
No.
You can use yourself. You can use your cell phone. You don't technically need to go and buy equipment if you don't want to. There's folks that use their laptops and tablets, things like that. But Chris, I know that question was more geared to you. I don't want to steal your shot. Go ahead.
No, I agree with you completely. I see too many people wasting thousands of dollars on equipment that doesn't have any proof that it works. Don't get me wrong. I have seen fantastic results with some equipment. I couldn't tell you the names of half of these things. One thing I would recommend, I don't own one myself. I don't use anything, but an EMF is a good thing to use, but use it after you turn off the power on the power box in the basement, and then see if you've got anything going on. And then if people are having real horrifying dreams and things like that, turn the power back on and see if you're getting high readings where they're sleeping. Because if you just move the bed to an area where those energy readings are not so high, often that phenomena will go away.
Yeah.
I'm working on a study right now where my belief is the reason we respond negatively to high EMF, I think, might be because psychics are more sensitive to EMF fluctuations. That's where we're getting our information, and it's a instinctual fear now in all people, because we're all psychic, whether or not we are aware of it. We have that capability. Children, especially because of neuroplasticity, they still have that wonderful flexible brain, and they're open to these things. They haven't been deadened to it. But I think that's probably why we respond to high EMF the way we do, is because there's a part of us that knows when we feel that means something is looking at us.
Like you absorb, you absorb more than the average person. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you might have something there. That's interesting. So no microwaves for you guys. No Wi-Fi either.
No Wi-Fi, no nothing.
No Wi-Fi.
Don't go out and buy $4,000 spirit box, please.
Yeah.
Get something. If a spirit wants to communicate with you, it will. I don't recommend that you just go and start communicating with spirits. That can be very dangerous, depending on your frame of mind and how you're feeling. And if you are going to go, make sure you're not asking the same dumb questions that they probably get asked a million times. You just want to say, look, I'm here to help, but only while I'm here. Yeah. You may not follow me home. You may not contact me after I leave here. You have to set spiritual guidelines for these entities. It's just like if I said to you right now, look, I need to get off. Are you going to try and stop me? Or are you going to say good night, thank you?
Yeah. Good night, thank you.
Exactly.
Like, why? No.
Well, yeah, and that's a perfectly human reaction. But most people will respect your boundaries. Yeah. And that's the truth also with spirits. So if you are clear about what you will allow, then they know what your rules are. Every culture, every spiritual pathway I've ever studied, no matter how esoteric, has different ways of setting down their own spiritual boundaries. And they work. Because we're dealing with people. I don't make a distinction between the living and the dead. To me, they're just people to help, regardless of whether they're in a body or not.
True. Is there any notable cases or experiences that you have went through in Colombia? I was just curious because since I'm from there.
Yeah, one that I love to talk about. I got to spend. I have a dear friend who's a Lutheran archbishop, and for his birthday, we spent it in a haunted brothel in Bogota, Colombia. It's a closed brothel. It was closed, but it was amazing.
He said closed.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, I spent a night in a haunted brothel with an archbishop. I mean, who gets to say that, you know?
Yeah, for real.
But that was amazing because I was able to pick up on so much. And one thing a couple of things. Normally when I'm on stairs, I pick up a lot. But I was going up these beautiful marble stairs, and I'm like, I am not getting anything here. And I mentioned that, and he said, well, that's because these stairs were made after the place was closed. This is now a social center. I said, oh, okay. But I was able to also pick up, when we were on the second floor, I said, when you're in the basement, you need to do some chemical tests and also dig around, because I think this was a body dump, and they used either lye or chemicals to break down the body. And the government liaison who was with us, a woman, she was like, how did you know that? That's true. I was like, see, that I need that validation. For me, without that, there was another incident. We were in one of the private dancing chambers.
Champagne room.
Yeah, okay. And I was feeling really lightheaded, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on, man?" And I thought, I feel like I might be on drugs. And then I realized I was in contact with this young woman who had died of a drug overdose. She wasn't unhappy. She was actually very happy, coming and going as she pleased. And one of my team brought out a spirit box. Now, again, we're in Bogota. There are no English language stations. Everything's in Spanish.
Mhm.
And a spirit box, for those who don't know, cycles through a bunch of different radio stations very quickly, and you try to pick up messages.
Yeah.
And I'm asking questions in Spanish, and I'm getting answers in English.
Wow.
Well, that's pretty cool. That's cool.
That is very cool.
That sounds really cool.
But
Yeah.
the thing about equipment, there is one tool that I really love. That's the Estes method. I love it because it takes that human element out of it, at least as much as we can.
Mhm.
So I think that's a wonderful method.
Yeah.
Do you since you do see things, do you see during an Estes method sometimes you get like images and stuff like that, like clairvoyant images?
Yes. Yeah. It's very important for people to not label their abilities. I don't. I feel that that's a self-limiting thing to do. Instead, I just allow myself to try whatever I need to try. One thing I found that's very good for me is I use my hands. I was in Mexico, and they brought me to this private museum. And the downstairs, first we have to ask the spirits permission before we go in, and we did. And then I'm feeling around the bookcases, trying to get a sense of where I'm feeling this energy. And I'm like, there's a lot of energy here, but I can't pinpoint any one place right here. It's not any of the objects. And they said, well, we were in the middle of a television interview, and we were talking about something that happened here, and the wallpaper started peeling right off the walls, right where you're standing. I thought, oh, okay. And that was because they had accused the woman who had died in the house of murdering a child, and she hadn't done that. I had then gone into the next room, which was her bedroom, and I asked permission to sit there. And I realized, yes, she blamed herself for the death of the child, but she wasn't actually guilty of it. She just blamed herself for her negligence. Mm-hmm. And she took her own life. Now, in Mexico, they have an unusual punishment. They would punish people after death. They would hang them, or in her case, they walled her up in the wall of the house.
Wow.
Yeah. So just another example of different ways you can use your abilities. I think the fact that I was able to share with everyone that she wasn't a murderer, that she was simply someone who was guilt-ridden, and that was what was holding her back.
Yeah.
That helped.
That's crazy.
Sad, you know.
I'm going to ask you a quick question. I wasn't going to ask this one, but our really good close friend Steven brought up something in the comment. So he has, and you have as well. I'm the only one that hasn't. I haven't come across Robert the Doll. I was wondering if you've ever seen Robert the Doll. What was your impression of it?
No, I've never visited. I'm not a paranormal tourist. All right, that's not fair. You put me in a European country or down here, yeah, I might want to check some things out. But my focus is always on helping. If I'm not there to help, I really feel like, why should I be there?
Yeah.
Unless it's a castle or something, in which case, yeah, I'm going to go. But
I want to go to a castle so bad. Yeah.
Have you investigated a castle?
Oh yeah, of course.
Cool.
That's my bucket list.
Several places in England and Scotland. I got to investigate Glamis Castle with my grandparents many years ago. The Tower of London, the Clifford Tower in York. One thing, I love this story. We were in Devon, in the southwest corner of the country, And we were at a pub having lunch, and my grandmother looks outside the window, and she sees a bunch of Roman centurion or legionnaires marching on the road, but only from here, from the chest up. Everything else was underground. And when she mentioned, she was of course startled by this. And when she told that to the woman who owned the pub, she said, "Oh, that makes sense. The Roman road is 5 feet below the road that's out there today." It's like my grandmother was picking up on that.
Wow.
I've never seen anything like that. That would be cool.
Oh yeah. The picture that I used for the thumbnail, I remember you telling me that was from a Masonic lodge. Can you tell us about that location?
Yeah, sure. There wasn't much going on there. There was just that was here in Asuncion in Paraguay, and the man who owned the lodge called me because they couldn't keep a security guard there for more than 1 or 2 nights. They just were too terrified, and I was quickly able to figure out that this was simply the owner's grandfather. He had owned the place. He had built it himself. He was there to protect his grandson. The lodge had a lot of politics going on, and there were a lot of people in there who weren't there for the right reasons. And he was only there for that reason. Once I was able to give that message, the energy in the place cleared up completely. They didn't have any problems, and so the security guards had no problem staying there.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You had answered a question I've always wondered if, and you answered it earlier. So one of the questions I had was, is the nun, if that was a real entity or whatever, but I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yeah, not at all. And the thing is, none of the movies are real. You know, the Conjuring movies are based on real cases, but none of the details are real. The second one, which people seem to love, God, I hated that one. It's just terrible. Nothing about it. There's no connection between Enfield and Amityville. A man named Maurice Grossman was the actual investigator in the Enfield case. My grandparents were only there for a week or 10 days. It was really not at all. And if you could get rid of a demon by shouting out its name, that would be fantastic. But no, it doesn't work that way.
That was one of my questions. Is do you think the movie portrayed them? Yeah. So go ahead, John.
No.
One of my questions was, how do you think the movies portrayed your grandparents? Was it kind of close to them?
I think Vera Farmiga, she does a beautiful job with my grandmother. But Patrick, I'm a big fan of Patrick, but he never met my grandfather. He's only going on some videos he's seen.
Right.
It's not very accurate, and I don't see my grandparents when I look at them. Having said that, the last scene in Conjuring 3 made me cry, because that was a true moment that happened. My grandmother and grandfather, their very first lecture was in Monroe, Connecticut. They were showing their paintings and talking about the cases that they'd worked on as a fundraiser to build a gazebo in the little town square. And my grandmother always wanted a gazebo of her own. And my grandfather surprised her and brought her out to the backyard and showed her her new gazebo. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. That's very sweet.
They did get some really good actors, though. I
really like them.
Yeah, I really liked them too. That's why
Vera's sister is the main actress from the Nun movies.
Yeah.
Which
and here's another piece of trivia for you. John Woo?
John Woo, right.
Right. He loved my grandmother so much even before he met her that in his original horror film, what's it called? Insidious?
Yes.
Insidious, yes.
He named the main character Lorraine in my grandmother's honor.
Oh. Yeah, true. What did you think of Insidious? Did you like that movie?
Oh, yeah, that was good. I love
that
them.
movie.
I love horror films. I love them. I hate them as a kid, but now I can't get enough of them.
To me, I use that movie as an example of like how I guess spirit sees us.
Yeah.
Like,
It makes you think.
that's the best way I've always been able to describe it. When I saw that part, and I was like, that's exactly how it is. Like, you know, they're all around, but they know, like, you're like a little pink, like a little beacon.
Wait, which movie are we talking about?
Insidious.
Insidious.
Insidious, when he goes out to the further, and it's like all black, and then he starts getting all these other entities around him.
Right.
But that's why psychics attract spirits more than regular people do.
Yeah.
Because your aura burns more brightly.
Yeah.
And you're like a lighthouse in the dark for them. But for me, best movie ever for showing the experience of a ghost is The Others with Nicole Kidman.
Yes, I love The Others. We talk about that all the time.
Okay, I'm gonna have to watch that. I don't know if I.
You know what? So we were talking about a theory. Now that you brought that up,
Oh yeah.
so in The Others, you know, like the spirits, they thought they're, huh?
No spoilers.
No,
Joy,
I don't think
forget it, Joy.
Do we see it, babe? Do we see it? No.
He said,
you're muted, Joey.
I think that's we seen it with Nicole Kidman, right?
Yeah, man, that thing is from the '90s, girl.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, we've seen that a long time ago.
Did I not tell you guys I have a bad memory?
Where they like they like close the curtains because the daughter has like or son has something wrong with the light, and they keep on closing the curtains and they find them open the next day.
Listen, I suffer from CRS. Can't remember shit. I just.
Oh my God. So what we were talking about is like how we investigate or we see spirit, right?
Mhm.
What if they're doing that to us, kind of like in the movie?
Yeah, like they're
That's what I
investigating.
think.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
They're more often than not, they're confused. If they're earthbound, if they haven't crossed over, then they're very confused, or they're in denial, or they're terrified, and they're afraid of where they're going if they pass over.
So
It's ones who have unfinished business, who come back just because you're thinking of them. Those ones are more focused. Though that's a different experience then. But for many, it's a sad existence.
Oh yeah.
Does that bring I know 305, we talked about this theory where when we're doing investigations, like how you say psychics aura shines bright and ghosts are attracted to it. Is it the same thing when you're doing a paranormal investigation? Like spirits kind of know you're opening that door, so anybody kind of just gravitates to you?
Yeah, my grandfather and I call it the law of recognition.
Okay.
That you are recognizing. People think, oh my God, haunted graveyards. No, graveyards are not haunted. We don't haunt our dead bodies. We're not attached to those.
Why not? No, I'm just kidding.
You know, but when we go in there, when the living go in there, and we're like, oh, John Adams, I want to talk to John Adams.
You're calling.
You're calling them to
Right,
you.
okay.
But you could do that at home. You don't have to do it at a cemetery.
Well, the reason I asked is because we did a show where we were communicating with my haunted dolls, trying to get names, and out of nowhere, we got something that we got a name, so a street name. So we started Googling these names, and it was almost like somebody came through that wasn't even, I don't even think that was attached to my doll, right?
Yep.
Remember that, you guys?
Yeah.
And we were like, what the hell? So that's when we started thinking, like, is it like when you're investigating, you're kind of like opening the door?
And anything can enter it. My grandparents were famous for saying that. Once you open that door, anything can come through. It's just like opening your front door.
Okay, yeah.
You leave that open, you know.
I really believe that. I mean, it's just, I really believe that.
Absolutely.
It took a long time to really understand or really think about that, but yeah, ever
That's
since that
why-
day, I'm like, that has to be it. It has to be.
And
That's why spiritual guidelines. Sorry.
No. I was just gonna quickly say that we had even asked that out loud. We were like, "Did you just start talking to us because it's like you realize?" And I think it answered like yes. And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah. Ever since that day, I'm telling you, I'm like this. I think we're onto something. I'm just kidding. I think we just unlocked You know something.
Well, that's why you have to lock it down afterward. You have to make you set your spiritual guidelines. You have to make your expectations known, and then you have to use whatever ritual you use to focus your intentions. I teach people the white light, but you can have a million different rituals. Sage and things like that, burning sage, only works for 2.5 hours. You need to combine it with a ritual that focuses your intention to make that actually last.
Yeah. Palo Santos. What are your thoughts on Palo Santos? I bought this at the Zach Baggins Museum.
About 9 hours.
9. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
But that's why you focus with a ritual to, make it last forever. Well, until you open the door again, one way or the other.
Honestly, I've never used sage. I've never used Palo Santos. We just kind of tune it out of our minds, and then we move on with our day.
Yeah, most of the time, if I have something visit here, like I had something a few months ago, it was the night before I was going to go to a house.
Mm-hmm.
They were having activity, and I get these thumps on my bedroom door. I was like, "No, I'm not dealing with you tonight. I'm coming to your house tomorrow. You go away now." And it did.
Now that you mentioned that, I see that happens frequently. Like before going to an investigation or something like that, like you get something from that area or that place, like come visit you. Is that
very common? And if it's a negative thing, it can be deadly. I've had, one time, 3 times in a row, 3 nights in a row, I had the gas turn on my stove without the flame, filling the house with gas when I woke up in the morning. I had another time, just as we were going to a house to break a curse, a generational curse, the car wouldn't start. And then all of a sudden it just starts. But as soon as we broke the curse and we're getting on the highway, the brakes went out and we slammed right into another vehicle. Wow. After that, the brakes worked fine and we drove home. My legs were messed up, but
is that after the Annabelle doll, or is that a whole?
No, it was a generational curse in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
That we were dealing with.
I know the animal doll, that was claims of that happening, right? If somebody would.
My grandfather and grandmother were driving through Pennsylvania. They had been doing a lecture tour, and they'd gone to places like Bethlehem and Lord's Valley and all these things. And my grandfather made an innocent joke. This was the 70s. He said, "Not even Amityville or Annabelle could hurt us here." And as soon as he said that, they were on an empty stretch of Route 84. And there was a truck about a quarter mile behind them. And they felt something slam into the back of their big old black car, spun them around and into a ditch. And the truck driver stopped, of course, and he said, "It looked like you just got hit by a car. There was nothing there." My grandfather realized, maybe you don't mess around with Annabelle, even in joking.
That was the first,
Yeah.
Wow.
Talking about Ed and him with his studying demonology, is there anything that you can think of that scared him the most? Like, was there anything that freaked him out? And the reason I was asking this is because I know with his military background, you think that helped his demeanor?
Oh, yes. My grandfather's hero was John Wayne, and he lived that way.
I see that. Yeah.
There was. You never saw John Wayne afraid, and you never saw my grandfather afraid. Not once. I never saw my grandfather get nervous or anything close to it.
Oh, that's crazy because I know I was going to start reading the books. A good friend of mine, Joe, he has all his books, and then he was going to read them, and then I was going to start reading them. And then I can't remember exactly which book it is, and I have heard this before, but after, I guess, going halfway through the book, like he felt like he started getting stuff happening in his house. I don't know to make it make sense. And then he was telling me, he goes, "Hey," because he knew I was interested in reading his books. he was like, if you do, just kind of be aware of that. And I was like, you're not the first person I've heard even say that. So
the power of suggestion is very powerful. I mean, look at the oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. The placebo effect. It is real. It works. We have amazing power. Our brains are incredibly powerful. And to me, that's a lesson of the paranormal. It's a hopeful lesson. If we let go of fear, what can we accomplish? But for books, I'll tell you, do not read In a Dark Place. That was my case. That was the Haunting in Connecticut case. I was the lead on that case, and that book is garbage. The Schmerl case, The Haunted, that's not bad. Mrs. Schmerl didn't like it that much. And Satan's Harvest, that's a good one. So is The Devil in Connecticut and The Demonologist. Those are the ones I would recommend.
Yeah, I think it was The Demonologist one.
Oh, and their very first book, which you can find it on Amazon. It's called Deliver Us from Evil. It came out in like 69 or 70. And actually, it's still my favorite. It's just a bunch of short stories, including a haunting that they investigated at West Point, which just blew my mind.
Oh, I'll definitely check it out. I have one last question myself, and it was about the Amityville case.
The Lutz case, yeah.
So there was I remember you had showed a picture or talked about pictures inside of the house. So there was a picture that it had like a moose. You remember this?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So in the moose, they were said that you can see like the priest's face, or I guess it was his profile.
Mm-hmm.
Padre Pio. He's our patron saint of my family.
Yes. So my question was, did you ever notice in that picture there's like, so that guy's profile under here, it would have been maybe his mouth or chin. There's, to me, I saw it right away, like an outline of a skull, and it's facing the other direction.
Somebody else mentioned that to me before, and I haven't seen that. But on the points of the moose, up above Padre Pio's head, there's another point that my grandparents never saw this themselves. It looks exactly like Butch DeFeo. Ronnie DeFeo Jr.
Yes. That was the other point. I remember that. Yeah.
So that's interesting to me.
Yeah, but that is crazy. Jack, if you can, just look up that picture again, and then you're going to see a skull. Like, I see the jaw, like everything. And I'm like, oh my God, how do you not? It's crazy.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I can't even read your names or the messages. So, I'm not the person to examine these things. I give it to my team to look at that stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Chris, so what I wanted to talk to you about, so there's multiple parts to what I wanted to talk to you about, but it's also about the Lutz case. And it's in the first part of the question that I wanted to talk about was the other famous photo from there. So you were saying that the news team that was there was the ones that was taking the pictures and filming.
That's right.
For folks that don't know, there's in regards to the famous photo that was captured where a demon has manipulated itself to look like one of the deceased children that were murdered there. So in the video that you had done explaining the case from your grandparents' point of view, and you were there as well.
No, I've never been to Amityville.
Oh, you haven't been there?
No, people seem to text me in the photo, and I'm like, hell no, I wasn't going in there. I was 12 years old and afraid of the dark. No way.
Oh yeah, he was very young. That's right.
My fault. I had mixed it up with another location. You had referenced though that in these cases that there aren't perfect copies, that there are some flaws.
That's what my grandfather said. Yeah, but that's not actually accurate because these things do duplicate perfectly. Doppelgangers are a wonderful example of that.
Perfect. So you actually touched on what I had wanted to talk about. In that photo, though, the eyes look different from the child. But that's where I actually wanted to kind of go into. In folklores, it's said that it's bad luck for you to see your own doppelganger. Is it possible that doppelgangers are demonic in nature?
Remember, I don't believe in demons.
Oh, well, that's true too.
Yeah, but my working theory currently. Now, listen. Here's the reality. When you see old videos of my grandparents, you're seeing a snapshot in time of what they believed then, not what they believed by the end of their investigations. And the same is true with me. That video on Amityville is probably 5 years old, and my views on that have changed already. I'm constantly adapting to new information. My doppelgangers have always bothered me, and currently my belief is that they may be some form of time slip, that we're seeing a manifestation from a different time period of ourselves or of a loved one. And that's all that is. I've been working on this theory to explain what people call residual hauntings, because the current theory, the stone tape theory, actually was created for a BBC docudrama in 1972. It has zero credibility. Even the man who came up with it said that he was only using that as a dramatic device. I think that if you throw off tremendous amount of EMF, for instance, a battlefield like Gettysburg or a dungeon, where people are, terrified of dying and they're throwing off all that energy, I think they're warping space and time. And that certain individuals at certain times can pick up or actually be experiencing that in real time with them. Quantum physics proves to us that time can go backward and forward without any discernible difference at the quantum level. I have experienced quantum phenomena on the Newtonian scale. For instance, I've been thrown across the room in a bed. The whole bed picked up with me and my cousin, flew across the room, smashed down and broke into pieces without anybody picking it up. So these are things that can happen on the quantum level. And little by little, science is catching up with this. They're realizing there are things that are on the atomic scale, not subatomic, that can happen, that are quantum phenomena. And I think eventually they're going to see that, yeah, this is also able to happen under extraordinary circumstances on a much larger level.
Okay. Well, do you have any other questions? I'm done with questions. I had Joey. Do you guys have?
I do. I have a couple more, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you get called to a possible possession, what are your telltale signs? What do you feel like is the first thing that you?
First thing is, I'm not going to jump to that conclusion.
Right. Good.
Too many people contact me every year saying that they're under possession. I'm like, look, if you were under possession, you'd know you were under possession. You wouldn't have to think it. I have been doing this 44 years. I've only either assisted on or led 12 exorcisms in all that time. It's incredibly rare. So I'm always looking for the natural explanations first. After that, then I might consider things like oppression. For instance, Arnie Johnson, I do not believe he was under possession when he killed that man. He might have been under oppression. That's a strong possibility, but not possession. Because he never went through an exorcism, and yet he's never had another reoccurrence.
Right.
So
to
me,
good example.
So exorcism, so if you're possessed, it's usually more than one occurrence.
Oh yeah, it's not a one-off. If it's a one-off, chances are you're in a wide open medium and some spirit just took control over you to get a message across, or just because. But that's probably a human spirit, and for some reason, whether good or bad, they did that. Just because you're dead doesn't mean you turn into a nice person if you died an asshole.
Right, you were still an asshole in the afterlife. I believe that. Yeah.
Joy.
So, but what are your signs though? What are you looking for? What?
Well, I had a case, for instance, I hate to ever think that it could be a child that's under possession. I had one ever. And this was in San Jose, Costa Rica. And my partner was bringing me to the house. The family had no idea I was coming. The girl had no idea I was coming. I'm a pastor. And she's screaming in the background, "Don't bring that priest here. I don't want to see him." That's a pretty good sign that we're dealing with something that has some knowledge that they shouldn't have.
Right.
When they are displaying abilities that no human being can have, strength, or speaking in languages that the person doesn't speak.
Tongue, or whatever it is, the tongue?
No, I don't like that, the tongues thing, because that's just no.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, and there are a lot of people out there who believe in that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not making fun of anybody's beliefs. If these things are intelligent, and they do seem to sometimes have limited intelligence, but they don't have the intelligence of the ages, ever. Let's be honest. If you were some high-level demon and you hated humanity, are you going to go after the poor schlub with drug addiction problems, or are you going to go after a general with his finger on the button?
General with the finger on the button.
Exactly.
Yeah, you want
These things are
people you can.
They're manifestations of us.
Yeah.
They're not external to us. I'm not saying that it's all in your mind. It's not. These things have power. They can kill. I had another case in Atlantic City where a man died. Those are the only two, thank God, where that's happened. Although I did have a time where I was sending one of my teammates to a house outside of D.C., and the night before it was a bad case. And the night before he was supposed to go with his wife, he had a stroke. He was only 40 years old.
Wow. So, Retro, I see your question, but really quick before we get off this topic, have you had any that failed? What do you do if you just can't get whatever's in them out?
Has
that ever happened, first of all?
Yeah, one time. And I brought in someone else who was better.
Okay. There you go. Problem solved. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I have no problem accepting my limitations.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We do have a question from the chat, and then I'll ask my question afterwards.
Alrighty. So this one, Retro Man, thank you for participating in the chat today.
Yeah.
Definitely appreciate it. And everyone else, man, you guys have been awesome. So from Retro Man, we have, what about skeptics? Do you welcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a skeptic. I'm a skeptic in every single case.
Yeah.
And
too. Yep.
Yeah, I will always go for the natural over the supernatural first.
Yep.
And the truth is, I'm not here to try to prove anything to anybody. If you don't believe in the paranormal, fantastic. That's a great protection. The last person to be affected in a house is the one who doesn't believe in the paranormal. It's the ones who are more open to it who are getting affected first. Your skepticism is a defense. So I have no problem with that at all. Now, having said that, I don't like people who are disrespectful and just discount my experiences as
assholes.
Yeah, I mean,
like the assholes.
You don't have to agree with my explanation,
but you don't have to be a douche. Yeah.
But don't tell me I'm a liar.
Yeah, don't be a douche about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who's going to tell you what you experience is not
exactly
right?
Yeah. And my grandfather hated that every single. I used to have this too. I used to do like Geraldo and these other talk shows, and they would always have that gotcha moment in the third act where they'd bring on a skeptic to say why you're full of crap. My grandfather hated those people. And it was always like Amazing Randy, this stage magician who believed that if he could duplicate it, then it proved it wasn't the paranormal. That's not true. Just because you can make a bird appear in midair doesn't mean that my grandmother could do that. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
So my last question is, babe, do you have any before I ask this one? No? So it's just a basic question. Do you think the more you acknowledge an spirit, entity, ghost, whatever you want to call it, do you feel like the more you acknowledge them, the more strength they have? right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're feeding them. You're giving them energy. You're manifesting your fears.
Yeah.
You know, I tell people, look, if you hear footsteps in the hallway, don't jump to the conclusion that you're dealing with the devil. The devil's not going to be walking down your hallway in the middle of the night. It's your grandmother checking on you, or the old man that used to live there just walking the halls again.
Yeah.
It's harmless. It's a beautiful experience. It's only your fear that's going to turn it into something terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where the mental part comes in. Like, you have to really be in a good mental space and turn it off. Because the more you think about it, the more it becomes reality. And
Yes.
I've always said that. For us, it works.
Yeah.
For some people, it might not work, because if it doesn't work for you, it's because you're not turning it off all the way. You know?
Yeah. Well, you're defining how it manifests, just like you've done. You know, at first they manifested something really beautiful.
Yeah.
But then they were afraid of it, and that's when it turned into something else.
Yeah.
And when the boyfriend threw that doll across the room and said, "You just stupid doll, you couldn't hurt anyone," it lashed out. And it threw a temper tantrum just like a child would.
Right, yeah.
But that's why it became the way it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think evil spirits start off evil. I think they start off to earn your trust, don't they, most of them?
Well, that's the traditional way it gets explained. Yeah, it appears as a child and they gain entry that way. There's a wonderful chapter in The Demonologist called A Conjuring Book for Christmas, where a young girl gets one for Christmas, and she starts, I think, using a Ouija board to communicate with a spirit by herself. And it comes through as a teenage boy.
Mm-hmm.
Then it starts causing a lot of trouble in the house and vandalism and terrorizing the family. It got pretty dangerous. I actually, just last week, was working on a case in England. Man bought this beautiful manor house up in Yorkshire, but he was in lockdown there by himself. And the woman who had lived there previously had taken her own life, probably through an overdose. She had suffocated through either laudanum or something similar.
Right.
And her father, who she lived with, even though she was 39, did not like her, did not care one whit about her. And she's still there. And he was trying to communicate with a Ouija board in the basement with her. And now he's under oppression. He's starting to talk to himself in the mirror as though it's a third person saying, "We're going to kill you."
Oh.
Things like that. So yeah, we're working on getting him out of there.
No. Shit.
Wow. That's crazy.
It's crazy. That's crazy. I don't know. Anybody else have any questions? I want to thank you so much for coming on again.
Chris, thank you. We
Yeah.
definitely appreciate you coming on with us and answering our chat room's questions and answering our
Our
questions.
stuff, yeah.
I love hearing all the opinions from everybody we had on the show so far, you know? Like, everybody has their theories or opinions, or it's
I'll have to go through and read them like this later.
You just got to make the font really big. You got to change your font.
What I was gonna say, can you tell the folks like where to find you, website if they want to contact you, or
Sure. You can go to WarrenLegacyFoundation.com if you need any help or if you'd like to join the foundation. We take people who have a lot of experience. That's important to us, and who have the right focus. But if you need help, all of our services are free and confidential, and we're here for you. That's it. If you need me, you can contact me on Facebook. It's easy enough, Chris McKinnell on Messenger. I'm also on Instagram at Warren Files, and I guess I'll start putting out some TikTok videos real soon too, because a producer friend of mine just made some for me.
Nice.
Yeah, you got to get your T-Rex costumes. And then, you know.
Oh, one last question. Chris, you are bilingual now, being forced through since you moved down. Are there any other languages that you speak besides English and Spanish?
I used to. I had to jettison. I used to speak Bambara, which was a West African language because I was there for 2 years. I spoke Thai. I was in Thailand for 2 years, and French. But when I started working on my Spanish, I was older, and I found myself speaking 4 languages in one sentence, and I realized I cannot do this anymore. I had to just give up the other languages completely.
Were you fluent in all of them?
I wouldn't say fluent. I was capable.
Able to hold a
have
conversation. Yeah. Nice.
That's fine.
Yeah. I only know bad words. I try, and I.
That's all we learn in another language.
I'm not interested.
Listen, that's all that will stick is the bad words. I can't remember shit, but that's all that will stick is the bad words.
Oh my God.
Chris, thank you very much for joining us on our episode today.
Thank you.
Chat room, thank you very much
for being here.
So how you can support all of our previous guests and Chris is to go ahead and join him on his page. Give him a thumbs up, a like, a follow. That way you can help support our guests just like you supported us and have been so lively on the chat today. And please remember, if you want to get spooked, hit that notification bell, hit the like button, and feel free to comment. Tell your friends, tell grandma, come and watch Spook Coast to Coast. But till then, we'll see you next week.
All right, y'all.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you again.
Thank you.